Okay, so we are running out of time. So thanks to Igor to steal my time. I'm really satisfied with that. I will have my little support during this presentation because the narration was changed yesterday evening, but the presentation is still the same. So my adventure with Magento has started 3 years ago with one of the agencies that is sponsor of this event, and I've seen during that time projects that collapsed under its own weight. If it comes to the projects, many times I had to handle the phone calls on Friday evening from angry boss saying that something doesn't work. And could we avoid that? 3 weeks ago, my friend Eva invited me to the construction site of Warsaw subway system. And I was really impressed how they work. It was really meaningful for me to find out how they manage to build so important systems like subway systems. You can see the picture from my tour on a construction. And what's the point? The point is that building such constructions is pretty the same like we build our e-commerce systems. At the very beginning, the city council had to analyze what are the needs of the city, what is the planned route of the metro system, and what will be the timetable, what amount of passengers they want to handle. So everything started with that. Then they had to choose the main constructor, the company who is responsible for delivering the all value, who is responsible for just running the whole project. And the main constructor was chosen in a contest. They had to find out who will help them to deliver the value. So after finding the partners to build that metro system, the subway system, they started the construction. And then after finishing the tunnels, they moved into finishing up everything. So that's pretty the same for us. We have to make workshops with our customers to find out their requirements, their expectations, and even architecture and platform they want to use. Everything is pretty similar. And once again, we also have to find the partners to deliver the value. It doesn't matter if it's a payment system, if it's shipping method, or if it's analytics tool. It's exactly the same. So more common stuff. We have, in our development, we have unit tests. Unit tests verify each single value delivered. Each class, each method has to be covered with unit tests. That's exactly the same when we are constructing the metro, the subway system, any building. You have to validate if the value delivered. It doesn't matter if it's concrete or other material. You have to check if it's following the specification. If everything is exactly the same like we expected, that's something similar to unit tests. Another stuff is integration tests. When we have our application built, when we implement another functionality, we have to check if this functionality doesn't trigger any side effect, if it didn't cause any break of other part of application. So it's the same for construction site. After each part of the tunnel was built, it has to be checked if nothing broke, if elements weren't misplaced. So another similarity. And the most important for me, is functional testing. In Magento, when we finish up the project or we just prepare release, we have to check if end-to-end tests are passing properly. If you are able to find the right product to use to sell, to buy. Yeah. And if you can do the checkout with cash on delivery, with external payment system. So similar action takes place when you are doing construction. Before letting people into the building, you have to check if the firefighters are fine with all the escape routes. That escape trainings has to be done, and in subway system, the empty trains have to pass the road all the way back to validate if there is no issues with the track, no issues with the stations, if everything works properly. So I hope that every one of you see the similarity, because the first part of my presentation has mission. So I want to show, it's PDF, GIF doesn't work. Okay, so this guy does something like, it's the same, but different, but still the same. So what I want to say, we are doing exactly the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's construction site or if it's development. So I don't let you anymore to make excuses like, I don't know how to test my e-commerce system. You wouldn't start building the tunnel if you don't know which route it should go. You shouldn't start the construction if you don't know how much it should have floors, or what are the escape routes. So for me, the main mission for this part of presentation is no more excuse. If you don't know how to test something, just don't start unless you gather all the required information. So it was 2 years ago, it was 2017, I went to Mage Test Fest in Amersfoort. Isa, who is sitting in the first row, was the organizer of this conference. And during that conference, Tom Erskine presented the first version of MFTF. MFTF is Magento Functional Testing Framework. And it's the tool that lets you do the last stuff I mentioned in the similarities between the subway system construction and the development, that you can perform end-to-end testing. And MFTF contains of 1,400 tests end-to-end. It's at the bottom of the screen. And it's made of 2 very known tools for QA engineers. I see some of you are QA engineers, so you may confirm that Selenium and Allure are very known for QA industry. The only new joiner to all that set is Codeception. Codeception converts the PHP code into Codeception converts the PHP code into instructions to Selenium. Thanks to that, you're able, writing the PHP code, you're able to perform the tests in Selenium to make sure that all the elements are visible, clickable on your website. So the only thing I noticed quite recently doing this presentation, I noticed that only 94% of the tests are passing properly. There is some contribution required to improve that. Anyway, we have MFTF, and during other conferences, that's Mage Test Fest 2018, that's one of the slides from also Tom Erskine, he mentioned that Marketplace will be integrating MFTF tests that you submit into the Marketplace workflow and frontend, so that your commitment to the quality can be demonstrated to potential customers. As you see, MFTF is not another, let's say, loud marketed stuff like PWA that you can hear again and again and again and again and nothing happens. Like there is only mentioning the development but not the result. So in this specific case, the results really come to the market. And Igor Gorin, who is the manager of this load LinkedIn type of title, but he's manager on Adobe. Also, he mentioned that they are seeing extensions from extension developers that are coming with tests already. So the point is that that people see the value from MFTF, and what I'm doing right now, I want to convince you to join that movement towards using MFTF on your extensions, on your projects. I mentioned before here, we have 1,400 test cases. So if you think that you have no time to write tests, if you think that you have no test cases, you can use existing ones. So also, Lisa, who is sitting here, mentioned that Valeria from Amasti also presented on Meet Magento New York about the MFTF. So the hype around it is growing. And let's get under the surface, because most of you are on the technical track because you are technical guys. So first step, how we can run it. Selenium used to be difficult stuff to handle because it was difficult to run it on a local machine like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But fortunately, we have Docker images delivered by Selenium that you can easily add 5 lines to your Docker compose file, and now you're ready to run your MFTF tests with Docker setup. If you don't have it, you can use local machine. You can use the images in Vagrant, Vagrant and Ansible. Yeah, Vagrant and Ansible. They are ready to use solutions. So it's not difficult. The only issue I want to point you out is how could it be different with Magento? It's not compatible with latest Selenium version. You have to use 3.8.1 version, but it's still available. So I recommend you to use standalone Chrome debug and standalone Firefox debug. That's because -debug extension makes you able to connect with VNC, the tool to remote control of the screen, and see what's going on the browser window. And from now, your real friend would be vendor bin MFTF. Most of the instructions, most of the actions that you perform with MFTF are run using this CLI tool, and it contains of several tools like generate suite, generate tests, and build project, etc. It's quite easy, but it's really valuable to remember about it. So another, I mentioned that one of the instructions is vendor bin MFTF build project. If you haven't run your project yet, you have to generate some configuration files. And one of the configuration files is an environment file. It should be specific for each of the environments. So there are a set of configurations. Wait a second. Oh, this screen is really poor if it comes to displaying that kind of stuff, because that's the variable name and that's the value, but the equality sign is not visible well. You can configure Magento base URL, so where your test instance of Magento is running. It doesn't have to be on the same server. It doesn't have to be on a production server. You can run the test on local machine and test the production environment. It doesn't matter. You can also provide the Magento backend name. So if you have your own custom path for admin panel, you can just configure that for that environment. And two following instructions, two following variables, Magento admin username and password, should be the admin account that it has root access and it's already existing in the application. And last two, if you are running Selenium hosts on different machine, on different IP, like in Docker, then you run the MFTF, you have to provide the instruction how to reach the Selenium. And last is browser. Browser, there are some instructions very specific for specific browser. You can run Chrome, you can run Firefox, you can also run, it's tested right now, you can also run the browser stack. So using that, you let know the MFTF which platform specific instructions it should run. So to run single test, we have to run instruction vendor bin MFTF test run and provide the test name. What happens then? Just MFTF connects to Selenium driver and performs actions for us. In this specific case, it's it's just connecting to the admin login page and oh, sorry. Yeah, it connects to the admin page, logs in with the test credentials, and then tries to create entity for category, create the product twice with different different data, and then checks if that product was created. So all that instructions are performed. And that two-side screen is the right-hand side is showing what's happening in the browser. So you can preview what's going on, what's now happening with Selenium. Running single test is quite easy because you can generate it. And run immediately. If you run it continuously, like you're running one test after another, it's good to use -r flag, which removes all previously generated tests and regenerate them from the scratch. If you want to run all the tests that are existing in MFTF, you have to use vendor bin MFTF generate tests. It generates sets of tests in codeception format. So all the tests that are in MFTF are written in XML. It converts them to codeception format, and then after generating them, you have to just run vendor bin codeception, run functional, and provide the configuration file that contains all the paths required to run. I mentioned that you have Magento, beginning from Magento 2.3, you have set of tests, like 1,400 tests. But sometimes your agency or you as an extension developer change the core functionality of Magento. So in this case, the tests are very eager to fail. To avoid that, the construction of MFTF lets you to override the test. You can see at the bottom, the blue ones are Magento core tests and resources. Green one is extensions that you installed, and red one are the customizations your agency has done. Thanks to that, you are able to override, to extend the existing tests. So if you change the core functionality with single line, you can replace the core tests, the behavior expected by core tests. Single test, this case, is following the Magento best practices because the test is made of action groups. So each repetitive actions are contained in action groups that can be reused between different tests. But there are also bad examples in Magento repository. Because we have validation of email on checkout process, and you can notice that, okay, there is, I'm on a page, I wait for page load, action group, that is fine, and then again, single instructions. That are actions that are repetitive across different tests, and it should be extracted to external files with action groups. So that's something I want to notice, that there's best practices, but as always with Magento, you can notice some issues that doesn't look properly. Action group is just XML node that contains of instructions, and it has own specific name. If you name the action group the same that it's in core, you will override the core action group. You can also extend the core action group with extra stuff, or remove any steps from the test. But it's just container for single actions that are repetitive. Very often you want to test different cases, but putting them, hard-code them into tests, hard-code data into tests, like the product name, the product price, etc., is just waste of time, because it's also a thing that you want to repeat one time and another. So it's the best to use data. Data are containers for entities, and as you see, we have, for example, entity for admin with wrong user credentials, and default admin user. You can predefine the sets of data that you will use for your tests. And last two things that you should know at the very beginning is page. Page is a container for sections, and it describes the real page on your admin, on your Magento store. So if you have admin login page, that would be admin login page, and it contains of admin login message section and admin login form section. That lets you to group to just differentiate the stuff that is specific for notifications from the stuff which is specific for login form. And then with your customizations, you can easily replace the selectors, CSS selectors in sections, or you can just define your own section for the page, for admin login page, for product edit page, or something. If it comes to sections, it uses two kind of selectors. One selector is a typical CSS selector, so you can provide class ID, you can provide the element name. You can also provide XPath, so you can easily check which part of the page we touch. At the end of the test, you get the feedback. What was right, what was wrong. The tests are in Allure format. That is pretty common recently, especially in Magento. If you look at the GitHub of Magento, you will notice that even unit tests are displayed as Allure reports. And as you see, there are 1,400 of tests, of functional tests run in Magento. And you can see which suits were done, were performed properly. If there was any failure, you will have the information about it as a red indicator that something went wrong. So even if you are not a technical person, if you have a project manager that is not technical, you can provide him the result, and it will contain not only the steps that were performed and how long it's taken to perform them, but also what steps were performed and what's the result. If there is any failure, you can just get the screenshot and the HTML output of the page that's failed. there is the goal of this results of this output is to have information in BDD-like format. Currently, it's like I add product to cart and checkout. I am on a page and the URL of page. I wait for page load, but it's developed to have 3 levels of verbosity. First is debug, so you have the step name, the instruction that was performed, and the details. Second will be non-verbose, so you just get the I am on admin URL, I fill the username field with God, I click login button. And the third one would be the behavioral that focuses on the business value. So if you want to show your customer the behavioral description, you will be able to do it. So the first 2 are currently available. The third one is on development. And yes, PWA, headless, and other stuff, because yeah, really, MFTF is related with old approach from Magento, and it made the way that you mostly test what Magento delivers you, but there is no strict rules. There are no strict rules. The tool is ready to handle even PWA, because everything that happens in MFTF is just Selenium instructions. Selenium instructions uses the Chrome, Firefox, or other browser API. So everything that can be done with browser, you can do with MFTF. There is no magic bridge that you cannot cross. If it comes to elements like testing the API response, you can also make assertions to it. It's more difficult, because that's not something that MFTF and Selenium was made to do, because we have API integration tests for that. But still, you can do it if you want. Interesting part that came to my mind after my presentation in Poznań. Competition. What's the competition? There is competition for sure, and I regret that Anya is not with us anymore, but Snowdog, I know that Snowdog is using Cypress internally, and they enjoy that tool, so I checked. Yeah, it's really comfortable. You can put an intern with your tests, and he will do it with Cypress. It's definitely something valuable, because MFTF requires from you to have at least basic knowledge about XPath, about selectors, about extending, about XML. In Cypress, it's quite easy. So that's first competition. And in general, Behat is tool very known with long tradition that is still developed, that is compliant with Selenium, with Sidious, for example, and Symfony in general. So it's really known to the market. But if it comes to competition comparison, the main benefit is that 1,400 tests that you get with Magento. So for me, personally, it's the most valuable stuff in MFTF. I would consider Cypress, I would consider Behat itself, but still, I don't get 1,400 tests with that. So Magento is winning with that value. Complementary solutions, that's something that came from Zalando after my last presentation, because they developed a Selenium. And if you're compliant with Selenium, they just offer you with single API to run different browsers, to cover different versions of browsers. They even handle the adblock mode, so you can enable the adblock mode and check if your e-commerce site is working properly with all the advertisement blocked. If without the tracking instructions, if it lets you to the checkout. Now we have several projects that are related with MFTF. So if you want to contribute, you can join For example, Magento functional tests migration. That's the project that moves all the tests that were done in different places before to single place with the best practice tests for Magento. And unless November 2018 MageConf, that was not so active, but you can see now that it's really developed. I'm maintainer of that repository, and I see that, for example, Divante from Wrocław is doing a tremendous job to improve functional testing. I'm also into Magento functional testing framework itself, because the tests are not everything. You still have to improve the test tool. So with that analogy to second line of metro of subway system, yeah, I agree that it should have been done 2 years ago when the premiere happened, but it wasn't. Now it's about the time. Yeah, Warsaw subway system yesterday. It's Monday today? No, Tuesday. So 2 days ago they opened another 3 stations of the subway system. So we have our 2 years delayed deliver of the value for MFTF. Yeah, and I want to invite you. Be the superstar. Be a contributor, share your knowledge, get the valuable feedback, join the Magento functional testing test migration, join the testing framework, and what is more, if you think that something in Magento sucks, in general, it just sucks under the surface, you can propose the architecture change. It's not well known to the community, but really, if you feel like something should be changed from the very scratch, join the architecture repository and submit your proposal to change. Getting back to MFTF once again, I also preparing the delayed, like Magento, delayed functional testing framework video training. You may submit to the newsletter, and I will let you know when it's done. So you're invited. Any more questions? So thank you very much for your audience.